Good afternoon. I'll try to be as quick as I
yeah,
possibly
as
can.
possible, yeah.
So I'll skip through the introduction because we all know the significance of dry eye. This is the original classification. What is important is that the recent TFOS Deuce 2 classification has stressed that it's not just distinct aqueous deficient and evaporative entities. There is also a good amount of overlap, and a good number of individuals suffer from mixed dry eye. And 60% of the patients that we see in our clinics with dry eye are those having evaporative dry eye secondary to NGD, and about 10% of them have a mixed component. This is the vicious cycle of dry eye. I'll skip this in the interest of time. The important thing is when you're evaluating a patient with evaporative dry eye, always go from the most non-invasive investigations towards the most invasive investigations, because one investigation or one form of evaluation does affect the measurement of the other. These are questionnaires that are widely available now. Most of them are validated, and they're all extremely useful in documenting the symptoms that a patient has and also following them up over time. What I use most commonly is the OSDI, but you can use any of them and they all work quite well. There'll be some specialized tests that I'll be quickly talking about. No financial interest in any of those. This is the TearLab osmolarity kit, which is basically an objective measurement of the tear film osmolarity. So the TFOS Deuce 2 report has also stressed on the tear film osmolarity quite a lot. The issue here, of course, is sometimes the repeatability of the measurements, and you don't get to differentiate between aqueous deficiency and evaporative dry eye. Another important tool is the Inflammadry, which basically measures the MMP9 levels in the kit, in the tear film. So what this is going to tell you is if there is inflammation in the eye. Based on that, you can decide if you would like to include steroids or other anti-inflammatory medication in your regime. Again, the disadvantage of this is that it's not going to tell you if the inflammation is because of dry eye. It will tell you there is inflammation. That inflammation could be because of VKC, could also be because of infective conjunctivitis or any other thing. So you have to diagnose dry eye on your own, not with this. LipiView 2 is something, I'm sorry, the slides are cut. So the LipiView 2 is something that we use. What this does is, one important thing is it gives you interferometry of the tear film. So there are other interferometers available as well. They all work quite well. So what you have on the left is an individual with a very healthy looking lipid layer, with a nice lipid layer thickness of more than 100 nanometers. What you have on the right is somebody with a thin lipid layer and a dull lipid layer with a lipid layer thickness of about 39 nanometers. So this is somebody with evaporative dry eye. And it also gives you these partial blink images, and you get these meibomian gland images. So when you have somebody like the individual on top having healthy looking meibomian glands, whereas what you have below is somebody with a lot of gland dropout. So that is somebody with probably long-standing meibomian gland dysfunction. So the management is to basically break the vicious cycle, bring back the homeostasis of the tear film that has been lost. Warm compresses, manual lid expression does form the mainstay. But the issue is you're not sometimes getting that temperature because you're giving those warm compresses from the external surface of the lid, but your meibomian glands are towards the inner surface. So you're not getting those temperatures. The vector thermal pulsation that LipiFlow has does bypass that. What it does is it gives heat from the inner surface, pressure from the external surface. It's about a 12-minute cycle. There is literature that supports its efficacy as well. There are quite a few studies now, but a significant disadvantage is the cost. It's a very, very costly procedure. Costs about 30,000 rupees for one sitting to the patient. And again, I would not advise LipiFlow or any form of expensive treatment in somebody with a lot of gland dropouts, because that's somebody who's not going to improve with any treatment that you give them. There are other available modalities as well, such as these heating iPads that are available. This is something called Meibo Thermoflow, and I've used them, and symptomatically I do believe patients are better, but there is not much literature to tell you how effective they are and how long the treatment actually lasts. Another important thing that is being spoken about very widely, there is literature to support it also, is intense pulse light. But the original publications by Toyos's group had stressed on the limitations and on the safety of and efficacy in pigmented populations. So how much it works and how safe it is for our population is something that we need to find out more, and we need more studies from the Indian population for this. So to conclude, aqueous deficiency and evaporative dry eye are not always exclusive. There is a good amount of overlap that exists. Whole range of diagnostic instruments available, some of them quite costly, some of them do add value. It's really up to the practitioner to see what they find useful in their practice. A large range of possible solutions as well, most of them quite useful, but you have to weigh the cost benefit, and you also have to see what kind of a patient base you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Tushar, for finishing it very fast and very crisp, being very crisp. So thank you to all the speakers for this session. So we'll hand over the session to the next group, please.